This is a commentary on Isaiah Part 2, number F0232, chapters 5 to 8. Beginning in chapter 5, verse 1. Let me sing for my beloved a love song concerning his vineyard. My beloved had a vineyard on a very fertile hill. He digged it and cleared it of stones and planted it with choice vines. He built a watchtower in the midst of it and hewed out a wine vat in it. And he looked for it to yield grapes, but it yielded wild grapes. And now, O inhabitants of Jerusalem and men of Judah, judge, I pray you, between me and my vineyard. What more was there to do for my vineyard that I had not done in it? When I looked for it to yield grapes, why did it yield wild grapes? And now I will tell you what I will do to my vineyard. I will remove its hedge, and it shall be devoured. I will break down its wall, and it shall be trampled down. I will make it a waste. It shall not be pruned or hoed, and briars and thorns shall grow up. I will also command the clouds that they rain no more upon it. For the vineyards of the Lord of hosts is the house of Israel, and the men of Judah are his pleasant planting. And he looked for justice, but behold, bloodshed; for righteousness, but behold, a cry. Woe to those who join house to house, who add field to field, until there is no more room. And you are made to dwell alone in the midst of the land. The Lord of hosts has sworn in my hearing, surely many houses shall be desolate, large and beautiful houses without inhabitant. For 10 acres of vineyard shall yield but 1 bath, and a homer of seed shall yield but an ephah. Woe to those who rise early in the morning, that they may run after strong drink, who tarry late in the evening till wine inflames them. They have lyre and harp, timbrel and flute, and wine at their feasts. But they do not regard the deeds of the Lord, or see the work of his hands. Therefore my people go into exile for want of knowledge. Their honoured men are dying of hunger, and their multitude is parched with thirst. Therefore Sheol has enlarged its appetite, and opened its mouth beyond measure. And the nobility of Jerusalem and her multitude go down, her throng and he who exults in her. Man is bowed down, and men are brought low, and the eyes of the haughty are humbled. But the Lord of hosts is exalted in justice, and the holy God shows himself holy in righteousness. Then shall the lambs graze as in their pasture, fatlings and kid shall feed among the ruins. Woe to those who draw iniquity with cords of falsehood, who draw sin as with cart ropes, who say, let him make haste, let him speed his works, that we may see it. Let the purpose of the Holy One of Israel draw near, and let it come, that we may know it. Woe to those who call evil good and good evil, who put darkness for light and light for darkness, who put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. Woe to those who are wise in their own eyes, and shrewd in their own sight. Woe to those who are heroes at drinking wine, and valiant men in mixing strong drink, who acquit the guilty for a bribe, and deprive the innocent of his right. Therefore, as the tongue of fire devours the stubble, and as dry grass sinks down in the flame, so their root will be as rottenness, and their blossom go up like dust. For they rejected the law of the Lord of hosts, and have despised the word of the Holy One of Israel. Therefore the anger of the Lord was kindled against his people, and he stretched out his hand against them, and smote them. And the mountain quaked, and their corpses were as refuse in the midst of the streets. For all this his anger is not turned away, and his hand is stretched out still. He will raise a signal for a nation afar off, and whistle for it from the ends of the earth. And lo, swiftly, speedily it comes. None is weary, none stumbles, none slumbers or sleeps. Not a waistcloth is loose, not a sandal thong broken. Their arrows are sharp, all their bows bent, their horses' hoofs seem like flint, and their wheels like the whirlwind. Their roaring is like a lion. Like young lions they roar, they growl and seize their prey. They carry it off and none can rescue. They will growl over it on that day like the roaring of the sea, and if one look to the land, behold, darkness and distress, and the light is darkened by its clouds. In chapter 5, Song of the Vineyard. 5:1-7. The vineyard of the Lord is the whole house of Israel. Israel was used to implement the plan of salvation, number 001A. The place of Israel as the inheritance of Messiah was determined by the one true God, Eloah, in Deuteronomy 32:8-9, when he allocated the nation to the sons of God. See also Israel as the plan of God, number 001B. Then he placed Israel as the vineyard of God, number 001C. The sequence was necessary in order for the final stage of the creation, in order for the elect as Elohim, number 001. See also Hosea 10:1, Jeremiah 2:21, and Ezekiel 19:10-14. That is an allegory explained by the compilation of scripture in the text in the 001 series above. It is thought that this unique didactic poem may have been composed for a celebration, perhaps the Feast of Tabernacles in Jotham's reign, the prophet using the form of a vintage festival song. See the OARSV note. However, its real purpose was to outline the prophecies developed by the Psalms. See F019:5-3. Following on from the law of the Pentateuch is concentrated in Deuteronomy. 5:1 Introduction to the poem. A. God set his beloved on a very fertile hill, so that they would produce. Verse 2. Choice vines. The Hebrew word sorek means either red vines or vines native to the valley of Sorek, west of Jerusalem. Verses 3-4. Judah and Israel's only possible answer would be to pass judgment on itself. This was the same way God had Nathan make David to have judgment on himself in 2 Samuel 12:1-12. Verse 5 shows God's judgment. Verse 7 shows the faithful application of God's will. For justice he found bloodshed. For righteousness he found a cry. The implication is that in the acceptable relationship between man and God, the compliance with the law of God is necessary. See also 1 verse 27, 9 verse 7, 16 verse 5, 28 verse 17. God requires righteousness and justice under the law, 1 verse 21. And they are naturally coupled in the covenant, as they are the same word in Hebrew, Zedek, Exodus chapters 19-20. A cry, that is, from the oppressed. Chapter 5, verses 8-23, 6 reproaches and a seventh. See verses 8, 11, 18, 20, 21, 22, with 10 verses 1-4 as the seventh. Compare Amos 5 verse 7 and 18, 6 verse 1, and Jeremiah 22 verse 13. 5 verses 8-10, against covetousness. See Micah 2, 1-5, 8-9, Exodus 20 verse 17. Bath, Ephah, 6.07 gallons, a homer, 6.5 bushels. See Exodus 45:11 in the note. 5:11-12. Against carousing, Amos 6 verses 4-6. 5:13-17. Knowledge, 1 verse 3. The severity of Israel and Judah's punishment will require an enlargement of Sheol, the grave, 14 verses 9-18. Verse 16, in all things God is just and holy in righteousness. Mocking God is condemned, in 18-19. Verse 20, concerns moral depravity. See 32 verse 5, Proverbs 17 verse 15. Verse 21 is against conceit. 5 verses 22 to 23 concerns bravado and bribery. 5 verses 24b to 30. These verses also apply in following 10 verse 4. See 9 verse 8 to 10 verse 4 in the note. Law, the Torah, again here in the sense of teach God's law. Both the Assyrians and Babylon, a nation afar off. Jeremiah 5:15 will be the executors of God's judgment. Chapter 6, beginning in verse 1. In the year that King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord sitting upon a throne, high and lifted up, and his train filled the temple. Above him stood the seraphim, each had 6 wings. With 2 he covered his face, with 2 he covered his feet, and with 2 he flew. And one called to another and said, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole earth is full of his glory. And the foundations of the threshold shook at the voice of him who called, and the house was filled with smoke. And I said, Woe is me, for I am lost. For I am a man of unclean lips, and I dwell in the midst of a people of unclean lips. For my eyes have seen the King, the Lord of hosts. And then flew one of the seraphim to me, having in his hand a burning coal, which he had taken with tongs from the altar. And he touched my mouth and said, Behold, this has touched your lips. Your guilt is taken away, and your sin is forgiven. And I heard the voice of the Lord saying, Whom shall I send, and who will go for us? Then I said, Here am I, send me. And he said, Go and say to this people, Hear and hear, but do not understand. See and see, but do not perceive. Make the heart of this people fat and their ears heavy, and shut their eyes, lest they see with their eyes and hear with their ears, and understand with their hearts, and turn and be healed. Then I said, How long, O Lord? And he said, Until cities lie waste without inhabitants, and houses without men, and the land is utterly desolate. And the Lord removes men far away, and the forsaken places are many in the midst of the land. And though a tenth remain in it, it will be burned again, like a terebinth or an oak, whose stump remains standing when it is felled. The holy seed is its stump. Intent of chapter 6. See the work on the origins of radical Unitarianism and Binitarianism. In the text, Isaiah, son of Amos, was born before 760 BCE. He began his work in 742 BC, in the year that King Uzziah died, Isaiah 6:1. He came into prominence in the Syro-Ephraimitic invasion of Judah in 734 BCE. From 734 he prophesied of the coming Emmanuel, and in 734 he retired from public prominence owing to Ahaz's conclusion of the Syrian alliance. His seclusion lasted until 715 BCE, when he began to speak more freely under Hezekiah. In 705, the death of Sargon II saw a general revolt against Assyria, and the invasion of Sennacherib saw the rejection of the Assyrians and their expulsion by God from Judah, with the virtual end of his ministry from 701. 6:1-13. The call of Isaiah. Here God's appearance in the setting of the Jerusalem temple. Compare the entered city in 1 Kings 22:19-23, Ezekiel 1 verse 4 to 2 verse 1. Verse 1, 742 BCE, throne is the Ark of the Covenant. Verse 2, the seraphim of Isaiah 6:2 were called burning ones. Thus the angelic hosts were of a fiery or shining bronze countenance. See number 246. They also associated with the glory of the Lord from Ezekiel chapter 1. They are teaching angels. Verse 3, the Lord of hosts is thrice holy in Ephesus. See Jeremiah 7 verse 4. Verse 5, before the holy God, man cannot stand. Compare Exodus 33:18 to 20. Verses 6 to 8. Isaiah is cleansed by God's forgiving act. Isaiah may now seek for God. This also prefigures baptism in the developing plan of salvation. See Numbers 052 and 117. 6 verses 8 to 9. The voice is from the temple. Isaiah answers. What follows is the most important prophecy of the deepest import to Israel's history. This was not Isaiah's first prophecy, but it was his special commission by God for this great dispensational prophecy. Chapters 1 to 5 form the general introduction to the whole book. See also Bullinger's notes. Us, the council of the Elohim, or sons of God in the host, refer to the Pentateuch, Genesis 1:26, 3:22, and 11 verse 7. 6:9 to 13, the Holy Seed. In this text, Israel and Judah and the world is cleansed of sin. Compare Jeremiah 1:10, 13:19, and also Amos 9:1 to 15. Verses 9b to 10 are quoted in Matthew 13, verses 10 to 15, comparing Mark 4:12, Luke 8, verse 10, John 12, verses 39 to 41, Acts 28, 25 to 27, Romans 11, verse 8. It is quoted in three great crises. One by Christ at Matthew 13:14, as coming from Jehovah on the day a council was held to destroy him. Two by Christ as coming from Messiah in all his glory, John 12, verses 40 and 41. After counsel taken to put him to death, from John 11:53, and compare 12 verses 37. 3. By Paul as coming from the Holy Spirit, when after a whole day's conference they believed not. Acts 28 verses 25 to 27. Verse 11, how long? Answer, see Romans 11:25. Verse 12, Lord equals Jehovah. Verse 13 is rendered obscure by revisionist scholars, compare the OARSV note, as it shows the wrath of God and the destruction of the earth in the last days, and the only elements left alive after the remnant of the 10th is burnt again to remove the pagan religious practices, and the only people left alive for the millennial reign of Christ, in Revelation chapter 20, are the Holy Seed, which will be the remnant of the 10th after their warning from Jeremiah 4:15 to 27, and the wrath of God at the return of the Messiah, number 141E, and 141E underlined 2. Chapter 7, beginning in verse 1. In the days of Ahaz, the son of Jotham, son of Uzziah, king of Judah, Rezin, the king of Syria, and Pekah, the son of Remaliah, the king of Israel, came up to Jerusalem to wage war against it, but they could not conquer it. When the house of David was told, Syria is in league with Ephraim, his heart and the heart of his people shook as the trees of the forest shake before the wind. And the Lord said to Isaiah, go forth to meet Ahaz, you and Shear-Jashub, your son, at the end of the conduit of the upper pool on the highway of the fuller's field, and say to him, take heed, be quiet, do not fear, and do not let your heart be faint because of these two smouldering stumps of firebrands at the fierce anger of Rezin, and Syria and the son of Remaliah, because Syria with Ephraim and the son of Remaliah has devised evil against you, saying, let us go up against Judah and terrify it, and let us conquer it for ourselves, and set up the son of Tabiel as king in the midst of it. Thus saith the Lord God, it shall not stand, and it shall not come to pass. For the head of Syria is Damascus, and the head of Damascus is Rezin. Within 65 years Ephraim will be broken to pieces, so that it will no longer be a people, and the head of Ephraim is Samaria, and the head of Samaria is the son of Remaliah. And if you will not believe, surely you shall not be established. Again the Lord spoke to Ahaz, Ask a sign of the Lord your God. Let it be deep as Sheol or high as heaven. But Ahaz said, I will not ask, and I will not put the Lord to the test. And he said, Hear then, O house of David, is it too little for you to weary men, that you weary my God also? Therefore the Lord himself will give you a sign. Behold, a young woman shall conceive and bear a son, and shall call his name Emmanuel. He shall eat curds and honey, when he knows how to refuse the evil and choose the good. For before the child knows how to refuse the evil and choose the good, the land before whose 2 kings you are in dread will be deserted. The Lord will bring upon you and upon your people and upon your father's house such days as have not come since the day that Ephraim departed from Judah, the king of Assyria. In that day the Lord will whistle for the fly which is at the source of the streams of Egypt, and for the bee which is in the land of Assyria, and they will come and settle in the steep ravines, and in the clefts of the rocks, and on all the thorn bushes, and on all the pastures. In that day the Lord will shave with a razor that which is higher beyond the river, with the king of Assyria. The head and the hair and the feet will sweep away the beard also. In that day a man will keep alive a young cow and 2 sheep, and because of the abundance of milk which they give, he will eat curds. For every one that is left in the land will eat curds and honey. In that day every place where there used to be 1,000 vines, worth 1,000 shekels of silver, will become briars and thorns. With bow and arrows men will come there, for all the land will be briars and thorns. And as for the hills which used to be hoed with a hoe, you will not come there for fear of briars and thorns, but they will become a place where cattle are let loose and where the sheep tread. The intent of chapter 7. Chapter 7, verse 1 to 8, verse 15. Isaiah and the Syro-Ephraimite War from 734 to 733 BCE. For the historical background, see 2 Kings 16, verses 1 to 20. Ephraim is here referred to meaning the 10 tribes apart from Judah and Simeon, and the Levites were the remnant of Benjamin. 7, 1 to 9, son of Shear-Jashub. Verse 1, Ahaz. For the history explaining this prophecy, see 2 Kings 15, 37 to 16, verse 5. Rezin, see 2 Kings 16, verses 5 to 9. Because reign was the last prosperous reign in Israel. It began in the last year of Uzziah, king of Judah. The son of Remaliah is repeated for emphasis in verses 1, 4, 5, 9. Pekah, as a murderer, from 2 Kings 15:25, could not prevail against it. Compare 2 Kings 16, verse 5. Verse 2, the continuation of the Davidic monarchy was threatened. See verse 6. Verse 3, Shear-Jashub, a remnant, shall return, assuming the words of God's promise to David in 2 Samuel 7, 8 to 16, and the promise shall be preserved in the remnant 10, 20 to 23. Upper Pool is a reservoir south of the Pool of Siloam. Verse 5, son of Tabiel. OARSV says, perhaps a prince of Judah, whose mother came from Tabiel in northern Transjordan. Most probably it is Rezin, king of Syria. 7, 8 to 9a. Some scholars hold that the text and meaning are unclear. See the OARSV note to that effect. Damascus was soon to be spoiled, and Rezin, the last independent king of Syria, was a firebrand soon to be quenched. The 65 years was compiled as follows. Ahaz 14 years, Hezekiah 29 years, Manasseh 22 years, total 65 years, and that is 13 by 5. 7:10 to 17, sign of Emmanuel. This text is regarded as the divine interposition where God prophesies the Messiah as the Virgin's son. Here God has Isaiah ask Ahaz, seeming to draw his response to verse 9, to ask him for a sign. Verse 11, sign, the Hebrew hoth, a present visible token or pledge, as in Genesis 1:14 and Exodus 4:8 to 9 and 12 verse 13, and especially 8 verse 18, used 8 times in what these revisionists claim as the former portion. Here, verse 14, 8:18, 19 verse 20, 20 verse 3, 37 verse 30, and 38 verses 7 and 22. And 3 times in the latter portion, 44:25, 55 verse 13, and 66 verse 19. The sign to Hezekiah was to restore the 10 degrees that had gone down in the sundial of Ahaz to its former position in the days of Hezekiah, as sign of the restoration and the addition of 15 years to Hezekiah's life. See also the significance of the term Son of God, number 2:11. Verses 13 to 14, this prophecy is of the Messiah, that is the sign given to the house of David. This was the second assurance that God had given the wavering Ahaz. 7:13 shows Isaiah's impatience with Judah. Verse 14, God here gives the sign of the Virgin and Emmanuel as God with us. This was perhaps the most important prophecy in the texts. At the time Yahushua came, the Jewish people were in earnest expectation of a prophesied Messiah, yet many in the churches of the world have misunderstood who the Jews were expecting. Let's see who the Jews thought Messiah would be. They knew he would be of the house of David, and specifically in Bethlehem Ephratah. He would also be born of a virgin, but they misunderstood this fact, and also his name was misunderstood. Emmanuel means literally with us is God. This aspect of prophecy was given to Isaiah so that it was seen to extend beyond the times of Ahaz, as we see from Isaiah 8:8, and would involve the captivity of the land of Emmanuel. Emmanuel, El is with us, is the text, not Elohim. This El with us was the Messiah. El is able to be used in the same sense of mighty one, either deity or angelic or also human. Number 003. See also the significance of the term Son of God, number 211. The Jews had no idea that Messiah would be of divine origin, yet how can that be from the above-mentioned scriptures? Isaiah 9, 6 to 7, 11, 1 to 4, Jeremiah 23, 5 to 6. The simple answer is that the Jews didn't understand these scriptures. Look at what the Sonsino says about Isaiah 7:14 with regard to the phrase a virgin. The young woman, Hebrew ha'elma, means an adolescent woman, one of marriageable age. The contention that the word must necessarily connote virgin is unwarranted. The Hebrew for virgin is Bethula, though Alma too sometimes bears this meaning. It is difficult to say with certainty who was the young woman referred to. Chronological consideration excludes the mother of Hezekiah, so Rashi, Ibn Ezra and Kimchi, and the fact that the birth or the name was to serve as a sign to convince Ahaz of the certain fulfillment of the prophecy rules out the Christological interpretation, emphasis added throughout. The wife of Isaiah, Rashi, Ibn Ezra, a wife of Ahaz, Kimchi, or a woman of the royal family, Abarbanel, may have been the young woman of the text. So we read in Isaiah and the Sonsino Press, New York, page 35. 7:15 to 16. The prophecy is that before Messiah knows as a child how to discern good from evil, the lands of Israel and Syria will be in dispersion and occupation. Verse 17, the king of Assyria, fulfilled in 2 Kings 16:7 and 2 Chronicles 28:19 and 20. He came against Damascus and took its people captive to Kir, and he killed Rezin. 7:18 to 25, 4 threats. These 4 threats amplify verse 17. Verse 18, the rivers of Egypt refer to the Pentateuch, Geor, 29 times in Genesis and Exodus, and only twice in the plural, Exodus 7:19 and 8 verse 5. 20, feet, see Exodus 4 verse 25 in the note. Verse 21, not so much the abundance of cattle, but the scarcity of people. This text refers to the millennial productivity under Messiah that begins to increase exponentially. Chapter 8, beginning in verse 1. Then the Lord said to me, take a large tablet and write upon it in common characters, belonging to Mahar-shalal-hash-baz. And I got reliable witnesses, Uriah the priest and Zechariah the son of Jeberechiah, to attest for me. And I went to the prophetess, and she conceived and bore a son. Then the Lord said to me, call his name Mahar-shalal-hash-baz, for before the child knows how to cry, my father or my mother, the wealth of Damascus and the spoil of Samaria will be carried away before the king of Assyria. And the Lord spoke to me again, because this people have refused the waters of Shiloah that flow gently and melt in fear before Rezin and the son of Remaliah, therefore, behold, the Lord is bringing up against them the waters of the river, mighty and many, the king of Assyria and all his glory, and it will rise over all its channels and go over all its banks, and it will sweep on into Judah. It will overflow and pass on, reaching even to the neck, and its outspread wings will fill the breadth of your land, O Emmanuel. Be broken, you peoples, and dismayed. Give ear, all you far countries. Gird yourselves and be dismayed. Gird yourselves and be dismayed. Take counsel together, but it will come to naught. Speak a word, but it will not stand. For God is with us. For the Lord spoke thus to me with his strong hand upon me, and warned me not to walk in the way of this people, saying, do not call conspiracy all that this people call conspiracy, and do not fear what they fear, nor be in dread. But the Lord of hosts, him you shall regard as holy. Let him be your fear, and let him be your dread. And he will become a sanctuary and a stone of offence, and a rock of stumbling to both houses of Israel, a trap and a snare to the inhabitants of Jerusalem. And many shall stumble thereon. They shall fall and be broken, they shall be snared and taken. Bind up the testimony, seal the teachings among my disciples. I will wait for the Lord, who is hiding his face from the house of Jacob, and I will hope in him. Behold, I and the children whom the Lord has given me are signs and portents in Israel from the Lord of hosts, who dwells on Mount Zion. And when they say to you, consult the mediums and the wizards who chirp and mutter, should not people consult their God? Should they consult the dead on behalf of the living? To the teaching and to the testimony. Surely for this word which they speak there is no dawn, and they will pass through the land greatly distressed and hungry. And when they are hungry, they will be enraged and will curse their king and their God, and turn their faces upward, and they will look to the earth. But behold, distress and darkness, the gloom of anguish, and they will be thrust into thick darkness. The sign of Mahar-shalal-hash-baz, intent of chapter 8 verses 1 to 4. The spoil speeds, the prey hastes, Isaiah's third assurance to Ahaz. Verse 1, a tablet of wood. Verse 2, Uriah, 2 Kings 16, 10-16. Zechariah, perhaps Ahaz's father-in-law, from 2 Kings 18:2. Verse 3, prophetess, that was Isaiah's wife. 8:5-8, oracle of Shiloah, waters of the Euphrates. Judah is included in Assyria's sweep as it escaped only by becoming a tributary of Assyria. Shiloah was a conduit flanking Ophel from the spring of Gihon. See 1 Kings 1:33 in the note. To the reservoir, 7 verse 3, is contrasted with the Euphrates, so Ahaz's mighty ally Assyria will inundate God's people Judah. 8:9-10, God is with his people, 7:14 in the note, to deliver them, Psalm 46, especially verses 7-11. 8 verses 11-22, the testimony and the teaching. Verse 11-18, Isaiah has much to say about this process of sanctification. For by it we not only sanctify and set ourselves apart, but we also sanctify God who saves us. See number 291. See also the sanctification of the temple of God, number 241. Compare also 29:23, OARSV note, man proposes, God disposes, Proverbs 16:9. Verse 16, bind, seal, as one binds and seals a scroll, Jeremiah 32:10. Verse 18, signs, 7 verse 3, 14, and 8 verse 1. 8:19-20. Condemnation of superstition, 2:6, for necromancy as consultation of the dead, see 1 Samuel 28:7. Verse 20, this refers to the law and the testimony. All prophets and ministers must speak according to the law and the testimony, or there is no light in them. What follows now, Bullinger's notes on chapters 5-8 for the KJV.